Welcome, one and all, to Enlightened Conversations, where this season we're going just that little bit deeper and not skimming on the judgy surface of life. I will also be sharing conversations with my guides, and you can be guaranteed that all the topics that come through are authentic, life-changing and enlightened, because we want you to live a more joyful, peaceful and loving vibration. Let's go. Hi everyone, it's Michelle Lightworker here, and welcome to Season 7, Episode 10 of Enlightened Conversations. Now, we're going to jump into some different stuff today with regards to understanding what is going on in the political arena. Why are these so divisive in terms of, you've got the Republicans and the Democrats in America, you've got Labor and Liberal in Australia. Why is this such a polarized situation in two very strong countries? And I feel like I want to speak to the deeper reasons why there's a push either end for these polar, not opposites, but polar situations. It's so divisive in political arena. In order to understand what I'm talking about today, we really need to cover childhood development, because unless you understand childhood developmental stages, you won't understand what I'm talking about next. So let's begin with a quick lesson in the childhood developmental stages, and then we'll figure out what's happening with this political scene. So this came to me the other day to explain to you guys, and I'll pop it up on the screen so you've got a visual of it. So here you've got stage of infancy, which is 0 to 9 months, and the developmental achievement is I am safe and I can trust. And the relationship issue with the self and the higher power and others is healthy dependence, bonding and trust. So when you're a baby and you come out into the world, obviously you're new here, you've got to learn that the world is safe. The people that are taking care of you usually meet your needs and you can depend on them. And in that stage, you can feel like you can trust the world. It's healthy dependency because you can rely on your caregiver. There's a bond there, that there's a connection, you feel like you can trust, and that extends out into the greater world on a bigger level as an adult. So we don't walk around paranoid. We don't feel that we can't trust anyone. We know that we can trust ourselves to make choices, to trust the right people, and that's where that healthy infancy stage, that healthy milestone is met. And obviously, if that milestone is not met, we develop distrust, we develop relationships that mimic that. We can't rely on people, so we're used to that, so we therefore can attract people who are untrustworthy, people who cheat, people who are not emotionally available, people who rip us off, people who can't be trusted with our private information that we share, that manipulate that use that against us. And so we stay in those relationships. We think those things are normal, and we continually get let down and we don't know why. So that healthy infancy stage, those milestones need to be met so they don't metastasize into toxic relationships or toxic choices as an adult. So we'll move on to our toddler stage. So our toddler stage is 9 months to 3 years, and the developmental achievement is I can explore and I am a separate being. And the relationship issue with the self and the higher power and others is counterdependence, boundaries, and spiritualizing our will. So therefore, as a toddler, just to break that down a little bit more, is we learn to say no. We learn to feel comfortable because we have that healthy dependence on someone we can trust. We learn it's safe to explore the world. We learn that we can go out and explore the kitchen cupboards. Look in everything, uproot everything. What's in this? What's in that? at 9 months of age, because we're so young and it kicks in at that time, we might find ourselves happy to explore for a little bit, but then we start to cry and get some separation anxiety if our caregiver's away out of the room too long while we're doing something, or if they walk out of the room, we might cry if we're not comfortable with that stage as well. And it's a fine line, because there's this, the toddler wants to explore and be on its own and be separate and say no, but then it also wants to know you're there when you need it, because it's still got that infant part on board as well. So it can be a confusing time for toddlers, and it can be a confusing time for parents. However, it's an important time, because if we haven't learned how to say no, we become people pleasers. If we haven't been validated for our no, we can become rebellious. We need to be able to validate that it's okay to say no. We need to be able to know that we're not going to be abandoned if we say no. We need to know our caregivers are still going to love us if we say no. If we want to adventure, if we want to explore, that we're not going to get into trouble, that we're not doing something wrong or bad. So the sticking points there can be, we can, if we feel that we can't say no, we can become avoiders. So we feel stifled and suffocated. So we want to avoid. We use addictions, we use work, we use silent violence, we use all the things that create distance in a relationship. And we can become really oppositionally defiant. And some toddlers develop that oppositional defiance disorder, where they go to that extreme of no, 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 no with everything. And there's no open-mindedness and there's no negotiation, my way or the highway. So they can develop those kind of personalities that just aren't agreeable at all. And the other extreme, they can become too dependent, too clingy, not develop their independence at all because their infancy stage hasn't been met, become codependent, not ever develop that counter-dependence, and they become very insecure children who do not want to adventure into the world. They want to stay in their safe zones with their safe people, and too much of that because they're never felt safe, so they have to go to that extreme of being safe all the time. Okay, so then you have, when those two milestones are met healthily, you have a child who trusts the world, has a healthy sense of adventure, isn't reckless, doesn't take too many risks. What comes back to the connection of safe and trustworthy people. And as an adult, they are able to adventure into the world, they are able to take risks, they are able to set boundaries healthily, and they're able to know what their limits are without putting themselves in danger. They're emotionally available to people because they can say no, and they can also hear, the no from other people as well and work with them, rather than feel like it's the end of the world because, they're not agreeing with me. Or I just can't say no, I've got to please people all the time. So those two stages are crucial, because it's the next two stages that we find the political ideologies kick in, and those traumas, those wounds that have kind of, any of those wounds that we talked about that they're carrying as adults, start to play out in the next two stages. The third stage milestone is the preschooler, which is 3 to 6 years, which means I can be me and I can express myself. That's the developmental achievement. The relationship issue with self and the higher power and others is independence, acknowledging and owning and expressing our reality, who we are, what we think, what we feel, what we do, what we don't do, and also being accountable, having no problem with that. Owning our feelings, owning what we think, owning what we feel, owning what we do and don't do, sharing that in relationship as I am an individual person. This is my sovereignty, and owning that sovereignty. So we hear a lot about it, and people talk a lot about sovereignty, It is a childhood milestone, and if it's not met because you don't feel safe to know who you are because you as an infant haven't had that mirrored back at you, you're a lost soul in yourself. You have no idea. You can be open to, as an adult, being more influenced by other people because you do not know your reality. You take on other people's reality. So therefore, you could say, as a independent person choosing a political party, or whatever that party is, you're not sure of yourself within that. You may find that you're more susceptible to being influenced by other people and their opinions. And as a toddler, if you felt like you had to be the extreme of oppositional defiance, you might find your reality is pushed onto everyone else. You're not able to contain your reality, or you're violent with your reality, and what you think your reality is law and what other people should be thinking too. So your extremism on your own reality and owning it and not caring about others as a toddler wound metastasizes in that preschool age. It doesn't resolve itself and then you become a healthy preschooler. There are things that go on. And as an adult, the milestone of the preschooler is still carrying the wounds of the infant and the toddler. So it doesn't just disappear and go away. It starts to take on forms that allow it to speak, and those wounds are open wounds, and they get more and more extreme as you get older, and they're more unresolved and not heard. Those parts, the infant and the toddler, screaming out to help me now, and it's like through this vehicle of politics potentially, or other things. So let's move on to the school age child, and then I'll talk to you why there's a bit of a tussle with politics and polarization, because you'll understand after I talk to this other stage we've got here, the school age, which is about 6 years old to puberty. The developmental achievement is I believe in what I can do, I can share, and I can work as a team. The relationship issue with self and higher power and others is interdependence. It's caring for self and others, passing on knowledge, and unity. So it's not just about me anymore. It's about we. It's about feeling confident in myself enough to now not dissolve into the group, but to hold myself in the group in a space of heart consciousness where I can share myself and others can share themselves with me, and there's a mutual respect and a listening, and that's the healthy stage of interdependence. That interdependence carries through into our love relationships, and that's a whole other thing, but when you break it down, the stages of childhood mirror themselves in the stages of a healthy relationship evolving. You know, the bonding stage in relationship, then the storming phase where you learn how to fight fair and have an argument without hurting each other and don't get stuck in the cycles of DV, and then the individuation in that relationship, doing things separately, and then also feeling comfortable with doing things together in that interdependent stage, and growing and sharing and doing different things that you share to grow the relationship. So relationships, healthy relationships, they evolve through this stage, these childhood stages as well. And where we can get stuck in that school age interdependency where it's not, we don't feel comfortable, we don't feel we trust people, we don't feel we can say no, or we feel all we can do is say no. We don't know who we are, but we have to be who we are and identify with something. We can collapse into the group and dissolve ourselves there. We don't know how to share, or we take on energetically too much of what people are sharing. So there's that other extreme. So with interdependency, we're learning to be who we are. and also share. With independence and individualization, we learn who we are. So those two things are really important. And the individualization usually precedes the interdependency anyway, because you've got to know who you are before you can share who you are. What I see in politics happening is there's a stuckness with sovereignty. There's a stuckness with individuation. There's a lack of awareness on how to share and how to coexist in interdependency. And that can happen because of those wounds that people consciously on a collective level might have as not trusting the world. So therefore those conspiracy theories can't start to become prevalent in a political party. You have the no, we're right, you're wrong, that real polarization in the toddler stage. And you have also more about me or my wants and my needs, rather than thinking about how as a collective we are going to healthily coexist in the world. So as I've looked at American politics, I've seen Republicans seem to be a little bit stuck in the preschooler stage. They have more of a mindset of even like down to their country. Our country's the best. We are the best. Make our country better, rather than coexisting in the world like on a playground where everyone's equal and we're all treating each other with respect. And there seems to be double standards and double rules for them. Like they want everyone to acknowledge and validate that they're great, but then there's this energy of not really doing that with seeing everyone else as equals. And that, I think, is a distortion in the Republican Party. And I think that is a distortion in politics in other areas of the world. I'm just going to give that as an example because it's kind of really obvious at the moment. We've got lots of things going on over there that create a sense of better than syndrome. I'm better, our country is better. That is a real symptom of a low self-esteem, a low sense of self-worth, and that comes through infancy wounds. When you don't have that mirror looking back at you, telling you you're enough, you can become very narcissistic, you can become very wounded, and you can become self-absorbed. And so those infancy wounds can come through there as well, with not feeling valuable enough. And they can show themselves in that, and I feel like that has happened. I think it's kind of obvious that has happened. I'm not saying that doesn't happen in the Democratic Party. Of course it can happen. But as a whole, and as it's standing, I see that the Democratic Party and what they're bringing to the table feels more interdependent, and it feels more about caring for the masses, like not just the rich getting the benefits, or they're thinking about the people that need help, not just trying to put a wall up between another country or clamping down on citizens and things like that. Like there's this not enoughness wound coming through in the United States of the we aren't enough, we don't have enough, so therefore we need more of protecting ourselves. And there's this energy of fear, and I feel like as a collective you have to respect that that's the collective. It's where it is, and it doesn't make it wrong. It does make it wounded, and it does require compassion, and it does require time. Because when you think about it, if you have a preschooler who's not met those developmental stages, you can't just make them interdependent. You can't just say, well, you should be now, because you're 6 years of age, you should have met that childhood milestone, and you should now be able to share, work well together, and feel like you're equal to everybody else and just as much value, and they are just as much value to everybody and back to you. And you can't just make people do that milestone. That's just warped thinking and judgmental thinking. What we need to do is have the compassion of heart space and go, well, you know what? As a collective, they're just not there yet. As a collective, their mums and dads haven't been able to provide the validation on that level for them as individuals, and they need help, and they need our compassion. And how can we move towards a more compassionate educational model that supports the people to recover, not recycle their trauma, and help them move through the developmental stages to interdependency? How can we help, not rather than how can we hurt? It doesn't solve trauma. Hurting does not solve trauma. And so that is what I really felt guided to share with you today. I hope that it's been educational for you. Sure that as a collective we can come up with solutions that support rather than create more trauma if we really understand the big picture and see what's really happening in politics today. It isn't about who's right and who's wrong. It's about the delivery, and it's about the intention behind changing laws, creating bills, all the things. It's about the intention. It's where it's coming from. It's not necessarily about the political party. Both political parties could be acting it out as well. It's not about Republicans, Democrats, or any other this versus that. It's about who's on the team, how are they wounded, how are they presenting it, how can we help them, and how can we become, as a eventual, we are anyway, collective well of consciousness, interdependent. And that is where I'm going to leave it with you today. Lots of love, everybody. Remember, solving your own traumas is the answer to a better society in general. Big love to you all. Bye for now.